Welcome again to Newcastle Family History Society podcasts. The Newcastle Family History Society, located on Awabakal land in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia, provides support for those interested in family history. Sometimes a family history brick wall can be destroyed with a basic understanding of how children in trouble were managed in the past. In the second of this series of podcasts on the suite of records connected to the Industrial Schools and Reformatories in New South Wales in the 19th century, Jane Ison will discuss the benefits and limitations of the Discharge Register, NRS 14723, located in State Records Kingswood. The names of some children do not appear in this register, but it is a very useful document when used in conjunction with the Register of Warrants. Jane will also give a brief outline of apprenticeships as they operated at this time in Australia's history. Might these records help your research?
The aim of these resource podcasts is to assist researchers understand the records they may need to use if their ancestor was admitted to an institution. In the last podcast in this series, I outlined the importance and the pitfalls of the Register of Warrants Received, also referred to as the Training School for Girls Biloela Parramatta Entrance Book, 1867 to 1924. In this podcast, I will investigate the partner document called the Discharge Register and will outline what we can learn from it, the best way to use it, as well as point out any limitations of the resource. The register should be read in conjunction with the entrance book rather than in isolation. During this podcast, I will refer to the resource either as the register or the discharge register, and I will refer to the Register of Warrants Received as the entrance book. When the first girls were sent to Newcastle in 1867 after the passing of the Industrial Schools Act, no discharge register was created. Instead, the Register of Warrants Received doubled as both an entrance book and a discharge book. This method of recording how children were disposed of from either Newcastle or Biloela operated between August 1867 and December 1875. For girls discharged before December 1875, it may be possible to locate their discharge or apprenticeship details in the entrance book. It must be noted that for some girls there was never any notation made in the entrance book explaining where they were sent once they left the industrial school system, and unfortunately the names and discharge details that once may have existed for 129 of these girls did not survive. Selina Walker was appointed the superintendent at Biloela Industrial School after the Royal Commission in 1874. On the 4th of January 1876, she established the use of the Discharge Register, replacing the earlier system set up by Agnes King. The Discharge Register is a single, thick volume in very good condition. It is the first of 2 volumes and was used until 1899. The original document is complete with no missing pages and is stored in State Archives in Kingswood. The entire register has been filmed. These images may be accessed on Ancestry or on State Records microfilm reel 3852. The register has been indexed and forms part of the Child Welfare and Protection Index on the State Records website. The register provides discharge dates and disposal details for girls who were admitted either to Newcastle at a very young age or to Biloela between 1871 and 1875. It is important to note that the discharge register never shows the age of a discharged inmate unless they had turned 18. However, it does show the term of the apprenticeship, which can then be used to find a girl's age by deducting the length of the apprenticeship from 18 years to calculate or verify a year of birth. Most girls were apprenticed throughout the state of New South Wales, often moving far from their place of arrest and the rest of their family. Apprenticeships were a contract and could be arranged when a child reached the age of about 12. An apprenticeship is frequently referred to as an indenture or an indentured apprenticeship. An apprenticeship lasted until the apprentice reached the age of 18. They could then be taken on in service at the same location or were free to leave to find another position. Apprenticeships could also be transferred from one master to another. If this transfer occurred, the superintendent at the industrial school was usually involved in arranging it. Occasionally, the register reported that the apprenticeship had been cancelled and the girl had been returned to Biloela. Sometimes an apprenticeship was cancelled due to the apprentice's misbehaviour, but occasionally the circumstances of the master and his or her family changed, so the girl was returned to the school through no fault of her own. Other methods of disposal are also recorded in the register. If an inmate reached the age of 18 while she was still located in the school on Biloela, she was discharged. There are occasions where some girls were discharged to friends or family. If this occurred, it was generally done with the express approval of the colonial secretary. Sometimes a girl was recorded in the register with the notation "to service," meaning that she had turned 18 but employment had been found for her by the school, generally as a result of a request from outside the system to the colonial secretary. Other rarer forms of disposal are also recorded, so if a girl died at the school, this was recorded in the register. Also appearing in the register is the disposal of the young boys who were admitted to Biloela. These boys were first admitted to the Vernon, where the ship's officers decided that they were too young for shipboard life. They were usually under the age of 8. The Vernon was moored at Cockatoo Island, so from the Vernon the young boys were sent up the hill into Biloela, which was the name used for the rebranded Cockatoo Island jail and recorded in the entrance book. There they were cared for until they reached the age of about 8. The register then recorded their names when they returned to the Vernon. This replication of boys' names makes the Biloela Discharge Register pivotal in identifying some of the boys whose names did not survive in any of the Vernon records, which did not reach state archives. I will discuss the Vernon records in a future podcast. The register was also used to record readmissions to the school, changing the system that had formerly operated, as prior to January 1876, the names of any readmission to Newcastle or Biloela was recorded in the entrance book for a second or possibly even a third time, and a new admission number was allocated. The main limitation of the original discharge register is minor but confusing. Deceptive encompassing dates outlined in the register state that the record commenced on the 25th of February 1869. This date simply refers to a small index recording the subject matter and sender of any incoming letters received while the schools were in Newcastle. This index was almost certainly commenced at the behest of Joseph Hines Clark. The first 5 indexed letters were probably recorded by the Newcastle clerk and storekeeper Frederick Kane, but may also have been written by Marion Clark, the matron. A comparison of Kane's handwriting would confirm the identity of the writer. From the 6th letter onwards, the index was completed in the hand of Joseph Hines Clark. There are no actual letters in the book, but responses to many of the letters indexed may appear in Clark's correspondence. This document is also held at State Records and has been viewed, but is a very fragile document. I will discuss this record in a future podcast. Other than the difficulties in transcribing old handwriting, there are no other limitations with the original document. Some minor errors in the transcription of the register do appear in the index, but they are rare. Researchers should always check an original document if it is at all possible to ensure that they agree with what has been transcribed. The register index, however, does have a major limitation. It is easily overcome once researchers are aware that it exists. Original images from the Discharge Register very clearly identify the headings on each page. There is a discharge number that is chronological, followed by the date of the discharge. Then the name and location of the person to whom the girl was apprenticed is listed. The final two columns on each page named the inmate and indicated the progress of the apprenticeship, whether it was completed satisfactorily, whether the indentures were cancelled, and whether the girl was returned to Biloela. The problem arises with the heading on the fourth column, which has been altered. From the beginning of use of the register, the word date has been crossed out and replaced with the words for what time or for what term. The original register therefore very clearly identified how long an apprenticeship was to last. By the later years that the register was in use, this heading often remained unchanged and so still read date. By 1890, the duration of the term of apprenticeship was frequently left blank. This is the major limitation of the Child Welfare and Protection Index that is found online at State Records. The index is a compilation of records from a variety of children's institutions where frequently an age was recorded, and the heading on the online index simply states age. The length of the apprenticeship has been inserted into the age column in the index. It makes no sense that a 1-year, 7-month-old girl was sent to a strange person on the North Coast, so researchers need to think about what they are seeing. Looking carefully at the original image clarifies what has happened, and the record makes sense. Once a researcher understands how the apprenticeship system operated and what this document actually recorded, this unclear and contradictory heading should cause no problem. From 1876, the entrance book and the discharge register operated together, and every girl whose name appears in either document was recorded on the Child Welfare and Protection Index. A big advantage of the online index is that it is a very quick way to find the names of some girls admitted to Newcastle and Biloela whose records did not survive. A search of the online index should result in at least 2 records for each child. For every admission, there should be 1 record from the entrance book and at least 1 appearance in a discharge register. The original records need to be checked to ensure girls with duplicate names are all accounted for, but it is relatively easy to match up the pairs of names and identify those that only appear in 1 record. As an example, Jenny Davis is only mentioned once on the online index. She had to have been admitted a minimum of 12 months before her discharge date of the 24th of August 1882. Her apprenticeship was to last 6 years, so if she was apprenticed at about the age of 12, she had to have been born in about 1870. It is then possible to use Trove as well as further records from state archives to potentially identify Jenny's family. Compiling all the records associated with Jenny Davis, including the letters in the Joan Rees Index, an essential resource encompassing children in institutions that will be discussed in a future podcast, it is possible to confirm who Jenny was. Family details for Jenny Davis remain in the entrance book, as she was the 342nd girl admitted to Biloela. Her details and the names and family details of almost all the other girls whose names once appeared in the missing pages of the entrance book have been recorded on my Wikidot website under the Biloela tab. The Discharge Register is one of the resources that is invaluable in assisting family researchers to track their ancestor around the state, as an apprenticeship explains how and why an ancestor moved many kilometres from their family. The register is also an important aid in identifying some of the 129 girls admitted after October 1869 and before November 1876, whose names did not survive. I have used this register extensively in my research for this purpose. In the next podcast, I will look at the records for the boys arrested under the Act for the Relief of Destitute Children and sent aboard the industrial school ship Vernon, once moored off Cockatoo Island. Registers for boys over a period of nearly 9 years did not survive to reach state records. I hope that you have found this podcast useful and will continue to view all records with a critical eye.
In the next offering in this series, Jane will look at the boys' industrial schools, the Vernon and the Sobrone, focusing primarily on the Vernon records. We hope that through these podcasts, you are gaining a better understanding of the lives of children in the mid-1800s, and that some of this information will help you in finding your family. Thank you again for listening to Newcastle Family History Society podcasts.